Hey everyone, this is the Cajun Gaming Guild, and today I just thought maybe I would make a video on basic Scratch, and I mean absolutely basic Scratch. I see a lot of videos out there, and I mean a crap ton of videos out there that say for beginners, for newbies, for whatever, and then you watch them, they're like 3 minutes long. Um, they whip through a bunch of code. They don't even stop and take a breath for half of it and explain anything. And then they expect you to just know what you're doing. So if you're a coder already, yes, you're going to understand it. I get it. But you're not a newbie. If you already know how to code, you're not a newbie anymore at that point. Whether you know Scratch or not, Scratch is just a super easy way of coding, but if you don't know coding, you don't know coding. Period. You're not going to understand this. You're not going to understand Python. You're not going to understand anything. So I'm going to try and explain how Scratch works at the most basic levels. Like you're a person who's never coded before, you've just loaded up Scratch. This is what you're going to see. What the heck does it all mean? All right. So basically, when it comes to coding, and I might not do the best job at explaining it, but I'm going to try. Um, when you code, what you're trying to do is you're trying to tell the computer what you want it to do. All right. So if you don't give it step by step instructions, it'll just do what it thinks it needs to do based on the programming that the person gave to it in the first place. Like this engine of game, or sorry, this game engine called Scratch. It will do certain things based on what you do here on the left, all right? All these commands. It understands what to do when you put these into play. So it's your job to use these commands, whatever they may be, uh, to guide it, I guess. And by using these pictures that you're going to put in, called sprites, it's going to know that, okay, if I use this picture, do what the commands put in here are asking me to do, then I'm just going to do what I'm told. And this is what it's going to look like when you hit a start button. Okay. So that in a nutshell is how you program. And it's all about the order of things. Okay. So what I mean by that, first off, you need to be able to start your game. Back in the day, I'm not a young guy. I'm 50 years old. When I was super young, I learned how to code, like really, really young. Games were only a page long, literally, like a loose leaf page. You could code up a game because the graphics were just nothing. It was a bunch of dots. It was pixels, basically, just a few pixels. You moved them around a screen, and that was video games back then. Sounds like a lot of fun, eh? I mean, it was because there was nothing better at the time, and we had fun with it. But yeah, obviously now you can draw full-fledged. You can put people in here that look completely real now. It's just how it is. So at the start of the game back then, you always had a file or a command called start.exe or whatever, something.exe, and that exe was just an executable command. And for Scratch, you don't really have that. Instead, in Scratch, they put something with this green flag. Okay, so this is how you're going to start your game every single time, unless you export this file out of Scratch in order to put it on like Steam, or if you want to put it on Crazy Games or whatever. Well, then you're going to have to figure out how they do their executables. And I believe there are plenty of videos out there to teach you how to do that. That's not what this video is going to teach you, okay? But for today, in order to start your game, you need to put an event called when this green flag is clicked. So as soon as you put this down and hit the green flag, your game is already in the works. You've already started to make it. And what that means is everything that you put underneath of this, I believe this is called a hat, all right? underneath that, everything that you put underneath this is going to fire off when you click the green flag. Okay, so we're going to go through the buttons a little bit. So if I was to put this tab next, this is move 10 steps. It's pretty straightforward. And what this means is your sprite is going to move forward, not backwards, because it doesn't say forward or backwards, but I just automatically know by default it means you're going to move forward 10 steps. Okay, so if I put that there and hit the green flag, my cat moved forward 10 steps. This button means turn 15 degrees. Now, does that mean your guy's going to go on a diagonal 15 degrees? No, all that means is your picture itself is just going to slightly rotate 15 degrees. See, when I do that, that's what's going to happen. You can completely do a full circle to 360 degrees, and then he's back to where he started. All right, so that's what this does. The opposite one is exactly that. It's opposite. You want to go the opposite direction. What else do we have here? So again, with this move 10 steps forward, you can change the direction that you're pointing though, okay? So if you were to click this, it's point in direction. And why does it say a number? Well, in Scratch, they use a 360-degree circle, all right, just like you should probably. And if I was to, and I'm going to show you, it's going to look weird, but if I was to click on this, it's your circle, and pointing to the right is at the 90-degree angle. If you wanted to point downwards, watch my cat is going to look a little strange though. Watch. Now I'm pointing downwards. My cat's pointing downwards, okay? But it looks like he's kind of laying on his face now, right? So if you do that again, you could go up to minus 100, minus 90. Click that, and your cat is looking the other way. Well, do you want him on his head though? No. But again, your code is only going to do what you tell it to do. You never told it what kind of orientation you want your cat. You just told it that you wanted it to point to the left. That's it. So all it did was flip your sprite completely upside down, which you're going to believe is an error, and it's not really an error to the code or to the game. It just, you never told it enough steps yet. That's all. So in order to fix this, you could scroll down just a bit and you're going to see this really cool thing called set rotation style. And you can click on that and it says don't rotate at all, which is exactly what it's doing right now. All right, I believe this is the don't rotate at all, or no, maybe this is the all around one. I haven't played with this enough, but it's not all that hard to play with. All you have to do is click on it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this up here and we're going to point in the direction there. All right, but before we do all that, we have to make sure that our cat is set to the original position, so 90 degrees, okay? And now when I click on the green flag, okay, he's going to move forward, and now I've set the rotation style left to right. So now we're going to move this way. We're going to kick the green flag, and now what happens? My cat flipped to the left, and now he's not on his head anymore. He actually just turned, it's just basically flipped the image of the sprite to look to the left. So instead of looking dumb and him being on his head, now it's looking exactly how it should look. And that's because I've set the rotation style left to right. So when you make, let's say we had a boat, okay? And the boat was here. I don't have a picture of a boat to show you this. But the boat was facing upwards. Okay, you're looking at the boat from the top. And actually, let's just go see if we can't find a sprite that we can actually show you. Oh, this would be a perfect one, actually. This arrow here, okay? I'm not going to make it animate, but I am going to show you the arrow. I think I can get it to work with the arrow. Shoot, I just deleted my code. Haha. All right, it'll take a second to bring that back. So, what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you that you can change your movement based on all around. All right. So pointing in directions, let's say you wanted to point upwards. Now, you know, with the cat, it looked kind of weird, right? but now it doesn't look so weird, all right? And when you're doing this all around, you can actually make your graphic go in any direction completely all around your circle. It will actually face that. So if we still had Scratch Cat, he would still look odd. He would be looking that way, and his feet were pointing that way and everything. But you can do that. So if you had like a boat, um, you could move it around the screen, and as you try and move it in different directions, it will actually follow all the directions around depending on which way you're pointing. And you don't even actually have to do this point in a direction. It'll just automatically follow wherever your movement is. All right. It's just I have to do this because I'm not using keys to move. So that's another thing. All right. So let's keep going. Go to random position. This one's a good one. You're going to probably use this one quite a bit in your projects. You could just literally go to a random position and your graphic is going to bounce all over the place. That's totally up to what you want to do, but this is not the reason why I would use it. I barely ever use this go to random position. Depends on what kind of game you're going to make. But usually I want specifics. When I make games, I don't make like random stuff popping up everywhere. That's not usually how it goes. But sometimes I do make games where I do have events that pop up, like a monster is going to pop up at a random location. So when I do that, I'll use this. But if you click on it, underneath here, you're going to have every single sprite that you've created up to date. So if you have 25 sprites of apples, oranges, bananas, basketballs, whatever that you've taken from the library, every single one of those sprites are going to be here, all right? With the name that you called them, all right? So what I mean by that, so we could switch it to mouse pointer, and that's pretty basic as well, okay? So when you click the button, it's going to go to your mouse pointer. But since my mouse pointer is not there, it's just trying to get to wherever my mouse pointer is. Okay. So what I mean by that is if I put this in a forever loop, so meaning when I click the green flag forever, I want it to go to my mouse pointer, it will just constantly follow my mouse pointer around. Okay. Pretty simple. Just like as if I put go to a random position forever, it's just going to bounce around your screen like that. Pretty simple. All right. So now, let's say we had more sprites. So I might as well just show you guys. It'll only take a second. So we have a balloon. We have a basketball. I'm just going to move them a little bit away from each other. And you have 25 other sprites. Well, now you can specify which sprite you want it to go to. So forever, I want it to go to the basketball. All right. It's there. You can't see it, but it is there. Oh, no, I don't like it going to the basketball. I want it to go to the balloon. Bam, it's going to go to the balloon. And it's going to position itself where the graphic of the balloon is positioned, all right, centered on the screen. So it looks like it's underneath the balloon, but really the graphic starts way down here. It does not start here. It starts here, and then it's basically hitting the middle of the balloon. So this graphic of our arrow, and I'll try and pull it out so I can show you, and this goes for anything. So if I want to drag this, usually when you drag things or drag code or drag anything, so this is going to get to our next part of the tutorial. So let's say I want to drag this code and I want to put it in the balloon. It's actually going to not look at your mouse pointer. It's not looking at your mouse pointer. It's looking at the top left position of your code. So if I want to drop it on this balloon or this basketball, oh, well, right here it looked like it is, yeah. But when you're trying to, so maybe I'm lying to you, and I don't mean to be, but it used to be like that. They might have changed it now. So now it is looking at my mouse pointer. You drop it, and it'll go into the balloon. So now that code is into the balloon. But for dropping things into the operators, so let's say I want to put this, and then I want to put this part into one of those pieces. You'll notice it's not looking at my mouse pointer as much anymore. It does work a little bit, but what if I was clicking over here? Is it looking at my mouse pointer now? No, it's not. It's looking at the top left of my icon or my graphic. So it's looking here. And if you don't put that part into where you want to go, it's just going to go wherever it wants. So make sure you're always using that part of your graphic to drop it into your position. All right, and then when you let go, it goes in. All right, that's what I meant when I was talking about this up here. But then they must have fixed it, so it doesn't really do that anymore. But the position of your graphic is usually somewhere in the middle of the graphic, and it's going to try and bring that there to the middle of the other graphic. So it was trying to go somewhere here based off of this part of it, okay, which is probably, so all you would have to do is, if you want it to completely be perfectly centered, well, you'd have to just play with the X and Y values. And so that's the next part we're going to talk about. You can move your graphics around the screen however you like by using this go to XY. So you could type in whatever numbers you want if you want to be precise, which is why this is very handy to use. So if we want it to go there, you just click the button and it goes there. And you can change this around however you see fit. And then you can use variables to change these numbers around during your gameplay so that you don't actually have to stop your game, physically go here and do that. So that's how you're going to guide your graphics around, and we'll get into more detail as we get to variables. But for now, this is an easy way to move your graphics around. All right. Now you also have this glide, and glide 1 second to random position, or glide 1 second to one of these sprites. So let's say I want my arrow here to glide to my basketball. Well, I'm going to glide, and I'm just going to throw this away right now. We'll glide 1 second to the basketball, meaning the less time you have here, the faster it's going to be. All right, it's going to take 1 full second from wherever you originally started to get there. If you want it to be slower, well, you add more seconds. If I want it to glide 8 seconds, you actually got to pull it away again, though. It's going to take, oh, it's going now. Hold on, sorry. All right, so yeah, it's going to take longer because it takes the full 8 seconds to get there from wherever your starting position is. So what would be beneficial for this is you're going to start the position, let's say, at, let's say, negative 125, and Y, so the Y-axis is up, will go up to 80. Basically, it's going to be up here where the balloon is. I'm just going to get rid of the balloon so you can see a little better. And now when I hit my green flag, my dude's going to go way up here to start, and then it's just going to take its 8 seconds to get back down to the basketball. That's what you would use. So this, like if you have a spawn system and you have monsters spawning in at specific locations, well, this is where they're going to spawn in. And then it's going to take them, let's say they all have to go down just a straight path. Well, they're going to glide to this specific location, all of them. And you could just time it so that they all come out every 0.5 seconds or whatever, and they are walking down a path like for a tower defense or whatever. All right, this would be one way you could do it. So that's glide 8 seconds or whatever to glide to a specific location. Then you can just glide to another specific location that you actually physically type in. If you don't have a graphic there that is a sprite of yours, it could be on your background and you just need them to get there. Or if you have a tower defense with a wavy path, well, you might want to glide to a location, you might want to glide to another location, you might want to glide to another, and then you want it to glide to your basketball. All right. Again, that is way more simplified than you actually should do a tower defense, because tower defenses, you should have it just sticking to your path and following your path. You shouldn't have to do it like this, but you may have a reason to do it this way. I have built a game, and it's actually a very fun game. I haven't showed it to anybody yet, really, but I have monsters spawning from every direction of the map, and they walk at specific, like I want them to walk randomly. There is no set path, and they're just trying to get to the middle of your screen. So I use this method for that because it works fine for what I need it to work for. All right. Okay, so that's that. Point and direction, we already talked about that. Point towards, so that again is going to, so let's say you wanted to make a game and you wanted your sprite to always point at your mouse. So you will have probably played games like this. I know I have, especially shooter games where you have your guy moving around the screen and there's monsters right on your butt. So you want to be able to move backwards and have the gun pointed at your mouse so you can shoot towards your mouse, and that's where the monsters are, right? Obviously your mouse is pointing at the monsters to try and kill them, and then that way there you can move around and your graphic is constantly moving towards your mouse pointer, right? So we did that. So when you do that, see my arrow is trying to follow and point towards my mouse pointer. It works pretty good. It's pretty easy. It's a pretty simple command. You don't have to do all these gymnastics in coding to get that to work. It's right there. But if you don't know it's there and you don't know how to use it, then it gets complicated. So here we have change x by, change y by, set x by, and set y by. So these are two completely different things, even though they look very similar. And it's important that you understand why they're so different. When you set something at all, you're actually changing the number of it to that number permanently. You're not going to be able to, so if you put this in a forever loop, forever it's going to set the x of that item to what you need it to be. So what I said is I set x to 87. So if I want to set x to, let's say, minus 100, permanently it's just going to set it there. It's never going to move from there. And if you try to move it, guess what's going to happen? It's going to go back. All right, now you'll notice my y, it doesn't matter. My y is not set for permanently, so but it's always going to try and get back to the original because I have it forever looped there. Now, the difference between that and change is going to take where it is currently at, and it's always going to change it up or down based on the number. If it's a negative number, it's going down. If it's a positive number, it's going up. And it's always constantly, and I'm not going to use 10 as an example because it's going to go fast. And when I put this here, it's going to want to change x by 1 every time it loops. So my arrow is going to forever start going to the right. Forever. And it will not stop unless you stop this. When you stop that, it'll stop it from happening. So that's the difference. You're taking the number and you're just constantly changing it by whatever number you put here. And this one, you're constantly just setting it to the specific location and it'll always go there. All right. So when you're making games, if you pull one of these out expecting it to do something and it's not doing what you want, it's probably because you used the wrong one. Because when I teach kids, this is the most common error I see. I say, okay, pull in a change x by, and then when I go check their code later, they've actually pulled a set x to. And that's the error. And I'm like, okay, that's why it's not working. And then once they fix it, they're like, oh, thank you. Like, all right, good. And y is the same exact thing, except it's up and down. So that's that. If on edge bounce, it's pretty straightforward. Once you get to the edge of this screen here, it's going to just simply bounce off. All right. So we're going to change y by 5, okay? And if on edge, bounce. So once you finally get there, you'll notice now it's bouncing off the edge of my screen. Otherwise, it could just keep going beyond it. All right, but that's what if on edge bounce. So if you're making a game like a breakout game, or like a Pong or something like that, where your ball is bouncing around, well, you don't want it to go beyond your screen edge. You want it to bounce off your screen and keep going, right? So that's where you would use something like this. All right, these x positions, y positions, and direction are exactly what they look like, except they're just these you can use in specific locations. All right, these are just if I wanted to set x to x position, you could actually put that in there if you wanted, or you could put the y position. Well, I want to set the x position to the y position. All right, there's reasons why you'd want to do that. All right, and you're not going to necessarily put these in there, but anytime you have something that has an oval shape, you can actually fit these into them. The same with the direction. Whatever direction you're pointing, well, you might want to put that somewhere, not necessarily here, but you might want to put it somewhere else. All right, and I might be able to give you an example of that. Well, I could right now, let's say. So let's say the x position, if you click on it, it's going to actually give you the x position, 202.0808 blah 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 blah, okay, which is a pretty huge different number. But if you were to put that in here and click on that, well, your number is going to say that now. All right, or your graphic's going to say that now. It's that simple. Okay. So that's what these are for, and I might actually show you these. You'll probably see them as you watch my videos because I do use these quite a bit. Next, we're going to go to the looks, which are going to affect what your graphic does, all right? What you see, what you do not see, if it hides, if it shows itself, what costume it's wearing, what it's going to say. Why are you going to use these say and think blocks? Well, I'll tell you why I use them. I use these to debug. That's the best way I can say it. I've done some code with clones or something like that, and for whatever reason my code is not working perfectly, and I can't even see my graphic. I have no idea where it's at. Well, if I pop one of these say buttons in, it's easier to see it because that'll pop up wherever my thing is hiding, and then I'm like, oh, that's where it's at, and that helps me figure out what I did wrong in my code. Okay, well, it's over here hiding underneath this basketball. I must have put some code in to put it at the wrong location, so that's why I can't see it. It's hiding underneath some other graphic, for instance. But when you put this kind of goes on top of stuff, so you can see it now, and you're like, oh shit, that's where I put it. So you're gonna go fix your code. So I use this to debug. Some people are gonna use this for their actual game and use it as a chat bubble, and you definitely can. But I will, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make my own chat bubble. I know how to do that, and that will be another tutorial, all right? To make my own chat bubble with my own words in it, that's what's going to happen. So that's why you would use these. Switch costume to arrow, that's exactly what it sounds like, okay? It's very straightforward. I just wanted to get rid of that say bubble. Switch costume is pretty simple. You could put this in a forever loop, and I'm going to just bring in a wait timer just because so it doesn't fly too quickly. And what this is going to do is it's going to switch, well, it's not really going to do anything yet. It's just going to switch it to the costume of Arrow D. So if we do this, we have 4 costumes with this one because I just used it from the Scratch library. You have the 4 directions. It's arrow 1 D, A, B, C, and D. It's that simple. Okay. So normally when I do costumes, and if I was going to use this arrow, I'm going to automatically just change it to 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's just because that's the way I do things, and I do this to all my graphics. You might think, well, man, that sounds kind of complicated. What happens if you have this for all your graphics? Is the game going to know what graphic you're talking about? Well, it's simple. The game is only the code that you're putting in is on the specific sprite itself. So if I'm putting changes to costume 4 here, it's not talking about the basketball, it's talking about the arrow. You can't mess up. There's no way if I put 4 here and I put the code for 4 here, it's talking about the basketball. It's wherever you put the code in is where it's talking about. So there's no fear. You don't have to fear that if you call this 1, 2, 3, and 4 and call 4 basketballs 1, 2, and 3, and 4, it's going to mess up because it can't. The code is specific for the sprite that you put it in. So you don't have to worry about that stuff. Okay? So that's how I do things, and that way there, when I'm doing my code later, I can use variables to change my costumes based on numbers because variables are numbers. All right, it's easy. So, and you can change variables that are numerical way easier if they're numbers just by simple math. So this is the easiest way to do things, and that's the way you should try and teach yourself if you can. I'm not saying you can't use letters and variables because you can, but you can't do math with letters. It just doesn't work. I can't do A plus B is equal AB. It just doesn't work in this. All right. So just know that. Okay. So, and I say you can't do A plus B is you can join things together to make AB. So that I am kind of saying something that's wrong there, but it's not an actual math equation is what I mean, I guess. All right. So in saying that, we are going to now go to the next thing, which is called, so if I want to switch costume to 4, it's just going to keep doing that forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, okay? So we don't really want to do that. That's not really helping us. But if we go to here and we bring in next costume, it's just going to constantly rotate to the next costume over and over every second. It's going to loop through and it'll just do that forever. So that would be a way you could animate things. So if you had a guy that was walking and you had 4 pictures of 4 different steps that he was in, or 4 different motion, it would just constantly rotate those. So that would be your animation, and you could speed it up by 0.1, let's say, or you could slow it down by 2. So it looks a little slower. Okay, so it's totally up to you what you want to do there. The same goes for your backdrops. You could do that with your backdrops. So one thing I'm going to say right now about backdrops, I don't use them. You might think, what? You don't use backdrops? Personally, I don't use them. I mean, I'm not going to say I never use them, because there might be the odd time that I do. But overall, I like to just make my own backdrop as a sprite. Okay, I'll just create a sprite. I'll make it bigger than my screen size here, and I'll use that as my backdrop. The reason I do that is when you click on backdrops, you also have code here, motion, looks, all that stuff. But if you notice, there are not specific blocks. There's not even motion blocks in the backdrops. You can't move anything around. You can't do a lot of stuff. If you go through these, you'll notice a ton of stuff is missing. You can't do the same code in the backdrops as you can in your sprites. So therefore, it's I don't see it as useful. If I can't move my backdrop around because I want to move it for whatever reason, then why am I going to use it in the first place? So it's easier to just make your own graphic, a gigantic one, and you can make your screen move around that based on positioning. So that's how they make RPGs in Scratch. That's how it's done. They're not going to waste their time making a backdrop they can't move. They're going to just make one as a sprite and move that around. So that's how I do it as well. There's not much point in using backdrops, but again, it depends on what you're doing. If you're just making a cartoon or an animation or something and you don't care that the backdrop doesn't move, well, then you're going to use the backdrops. So it's totally up to you. All right. So we're going to go back to here, and now we're going to go into the next area, which is change size. So this one's a big one. I will do a tutorial on a little zoom button there in the future, and you're going to be able to use these to do that. It's pretty simple. All you're doing is changing the size of your graphic. Right now it's at 100%, that's how it starts, but you could change this to 200%, which is double the size, and bam, it's going to change the size, and you'll see that it actually changes here. So put it back to 100, that's regular size. That's how you change the size of your graphics on the fly in your code. Now, if that's set size, again, so like we said, setting something is just going to automatically put it there forever. So if I put this here, set size, and hit this, it's just forever going to be there. You couldn't change it even if you wanted to. I could come down here and try and change it physically, but guess what? It's going to go back to 100 because that's what I told it to do. But if you change size, let's say I want to change size by 1 because I don't want it to do 10, it'll be too quick, and I put it in here, it's going to just grow forever. It'll soon take up our entire screen here, all right? So you can see the numbers growing by 1 every second. All right, so that's the difference again. So we'll just set that back to 100. Change color effect. This one's fun. All right, I teach kids this one all the time, and all the things that are underneath, because I feel that this is very handy for games. You can make a really awesome fire animation. I may show that to you guys in another video. I already did one for a game that I made, and I have a fire pit in the middle of my screen. It's completely dark and spooky. The graphics all around. And I have a radius of light all the way around the fire, a circumference of light, I should say. And as you build your fire up, the circumference grows with the size of the fire, and it spreads out towards the map, and you can see anything within that circumference is like I don't even can't think of the word I want to use here, but as the fire is sparking and glowing, everything sparks and glows with it. And I do that with with this effect called brightness, all right? It's not all that difficult. But I will show you guys how to do that. And so it makes my graphics look like it's dark, and that as the fire is glowing and sparking and whatever else, that everything, it's like the ambience of the fire is spread to everything around it, and it looks like you're actually sitting around a fire pit, and it looks more realistic that way, all right? So that would be done with this effect thing. So if you want to change the color effect, well, you're going to watch. My thing is going to just constantly change because colors are determined by numbers, all right? So if you don't want it to do this, well, then you would set it to a specific color. So I just want it to be what it was before, which is 0. But if I wanted to make it, let's say, whatever 25 is, well, you change it to 25, which is orange. If you don't want it orange, but you wanted some kind of color in between, well, you keep changing the number till you find the one you like, because in that specific game I was talking about there that I'm making, I want the fire to damage creatures when they are inside that circumference. So what I did was to visually see that my fire is lit up because it was a magical fire, I have it turning like a ghostly green color. So all I did was find the number of that in here. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And I set it to there. It's almost close to this. It's a little bit bluer than this. And so when I click the button to turn my fire power on so that it starts damaging everything within its circumference as they're trying to get to the fire to put it out in the middle, then it changes that weird green ghostly color. And when it's in that color, it's damaging them and they start to die. But when it's in that color, my fire is draining quicker because the fire is what's killing them. It's a magical fire. So what happens is, in order to visually see that my fire is damaging them, I see that color change. So I know, oh, my fire's draining quickly now, and if your fire goes out, game over. So you have to try and manage how much fire that you have versus how much damage. So then you can shut it off if you realize, oh, I left it on. There's no monsters right now, because there are times where your monsters stop spawning. So you have to control and manage your time, and that I did that visually. And this would be the way I did it. I did it with a color effect. Okay, so you might have another way to use this. That's the way I use it. So again, we're going to now switch this. We're going to check out the brightness effect. Okay, I'm not going to put 90, but I should probably set the color effect to 0 first, just to change it back to normal. And we're going to put this at 50%, let's say. So we want this to set, so now you'll see, now it's lighter by 50%. Now you can go negative 50, which will be the opposite. It'll be darker by 50%. And you can go 100%, and all that's going to do is turn it black. Right? That's it. It just turns it black because there's no light at all. And the opposite is true. If you put 100%, it just turns white and it blends in. You can't even see it anymore, which you'd be like, well, where did my graphic go? Well, obviously there's an error in your code, and this is, okay? So that's how you use brightness. If you want that cool fire effect that I did, well, all I did was forever set up a random number and change brightness to that random number every second. So then it's up, down. But I didn't want it to go completely black, and I didn't want it to go completely white. So I changed it from, let's say, negative 50 to positive 50. And then every second it's going up, down, bright, dark, and it's causing that like weird, eerie fire effect. Okay. And I played around with it until I had the numbers that I liked. And then once I did, it looked close to a real fire, and I just let it go. And then I set that same code into every piece of graphic that my circumference was touching, and it worked fine. Everything was changing at the same exact time, brightness wise, to my fire, matching it up, and it looked like a real fire. It looked awesome. All right, so just wanted to share that with you guys. You might want to use that effect in your games. So next we have we did the brightness. I'm not going to go into great detail with these, all right? But they all basically change your graphic in a weird sense. I guess I can show you fisheye right quickly. I'm not going to do it in the forever loop though. So as you do this, basically what's going to happen is it's going to grow from the middle of your graphic. It's going to kind of cause like a boil effect, like a um, bubble effect. It's going to bubble outwards from the center. Watch. See how you can, and you just keep changing it. Oh, so I'm setting it, sorry. And exactly, there's my error. I'm changing it. So we'll put that to fisheye 25. So you'll see it's just going to bubble out from the middle. So one way you could use this for is, let's say I was pushing on a button and it looked like this. Well, I wanted to change by 25 4 times in a row, making it bubbly like this, but then I wanted to go back to its original position. Okay, so minus 25, for instance. Let's do that. So you'll see now. Okay. Oh, sorry. I have one as fisheye and one as color. My bad. Let's set color effect to 0. And so now if we do this, you're not seeing anything happen. And the reason is because it's happening so quickly, you can't actually see the change. So if you put a wait event in there, in the middle, let's do even 0.1 just to see what happens now. So see, it kind of gives you like a button clicking animation, and it's easy to do. It's not, you don't actually have to change the graphics themselves. It's just doing that. And so if you want to slow that down, it would look even cooler maybe, right? It's totally up to what you want to do. So, and this is a forever loop. So instead of a forever loop, you would just do it so that when you click on this sprite, for instance, it's just going to do that right quickly and stop. And it's that simple. So I want to make sure that that's reset. But whenever this sprite is clicked, and I'll show you what I mean. So I have to make sure that I reset everything back. So I want to set the fisheye to 0 so that it's back to normal. So now when I click on this sprite, bam, right? You've seen it happen quickly. And then you can make it so that it looks bigger even if you want, or smaller, or you go the opposite way. It's totally up to you. So that's a way that you could use fisheye. Some people use fisheye, and there are tutorials out there where if you put an invisible bar on top of it, that squish effect actually compresses against it, and it almost looks like if Mario was jumping up to hit a coin. When he squishes for a second and then unsquishes, that's the effect it would give you because it squishes up against your invisible line. So again, you can use this effect in the way you want. The same go for the world, the same go for the pixelate, etc. Okay, they all do different effects, and that'll be up to you to try them out yourself. Okay, they all basically do the same idea, just in a different way. All right, so pixelated is just going to make it look pixelated, and then you can bring it back by the opposite with a negative number if you want. So if you wanted a guy to die and you want him to just pixelate out of existence and disappear, well, you could use that effect. It would look awesome probably. So that's one way of doing it. And the last, though, that you are going to use, and this one here you're going to use mostly for games that you want a graphic to be there, you want it hidden, but you don't want it to actually physically hide with this command right here, because all this is going to do is completely make it disappear. You want it to be there so that another sprite can actually find it, but but you don't want to see it. So this is where you would use the ghost effect, all right? And the ghost effect is pretty straightforward. If ghost, and I guess I better use the set just so I can show you. If ghosted is set to 0, well, that's where it's supposed to be. That's what it is normally. But at 100%, it's gone. It's completely invisible. All right, so just so you know that. So anywhere's in between that number, 100 and 0, is going to just be, it looks like it's ghosted now. You can see through it a little bit. And if I was to bring that graphic over here on top of the ball, you'll be able to see through it to the ball. So I use the ghost effect for menus that I want it to be on top of something, but I want to still be able to see through the menu a little bit to see what's beyond it. I'll use the ghost effect. All right, and you might as well. For a tower defense game, so you want a graphic, you want your monsters to follow the path to wherever you want it to end. It might be a swervy path, but you want it to be touching something to keep them on the path. All right. And if you watched, I can't remember the guy who made the tutorial. It was an awesome tutorial on tower defenses. It was probably one of the best ones I had ever watched. It taught me a lot. That guy there, he had an invisible line on his path that you could not see, and it was ghosted. All right, so the graphic knew that the line was there because it was touching it, so it would just follow the path along, even though you couldn't see it. It was still there, and that's how he did it. He did it with the ghost effect. If it was hidden, it wouldn't actually be there. So therefore, the graphic wouldn't be able to touch it, and it would just go off the path. So you have to understand how that works, and it's up to you to just play with these, and you'll figure that out as you go. All right, so that's what that's used for. Next, we're going to go to the layering. Oh boy, and is this important? I can't even stress this enough, how important this is. I'm just going to get rid of some of these blocks, get them out of here, clean up my coding area right quickly here. I'll keep that out for now. So layering. Let us bring out some graphics here right quickly. I guess I should set the ghost effect to 0 just to get it back to normal. Let me just bring out a few other graphics just so I can show you what I mean by layering. Oops, I went into somewhere else. All right, we have 4 graphics. Now you're going to see that my apple is on top of my banana. If I drag this basketball, it's on top of the apple, and this is on top of that. Why did it work exactly how I wanted it to? Well, it did because as you make graphics appear, they're going to always stack on top of everything behind them, all right? So if you have a menu that opens, because I just opened it by pressing a specific key, it's going to appear on top of everything. The only exception to that is if you have graphics put in a forever loop to always appear in the front layer, then they will always be on top of everything all the time. Doesn't matter what you do, they're always going to be in the front layer. So let's say I put a forever loop, go to front layer and show on this apple. I'm going to do that right now. We're going to hit the green flag. Bam. My apple is going on top of all of those other graphics now forever. Now I want to put this on top of that. It's not going to work. Why? It's because forever that apple wants to appear on the front layer. All right. There's no way you can change that unless you go to the code here and stop it. All right. Now it no longer can go to the front layer because I just stopped the code. So again, for menus, this is a perfect way to do this so that when I open the menu, bam, it's going to appear at the top of everything no matter what. All right. So it's going to appear on the top of all those things forever. And then when I shut my menu down, I have a code, and I'll get to that later, that's going to stop the script. So bam, it's going to shut this off, closing it and allowing it to go behind everything again and hide like it's supposed to do. So that's how you're going to use this go to front layer. But layering is super important because you might make a menu, and in that menu you might have a bunch of squares that you pre-planned with a bunch of icons in them for all the stuff that you might sell or whatever your menu is all about with information. And when you open your menu, half of it's gone and you're like, oh shit, where did it all go? Well, it's because you layered it wrong and it's hiding behind your menu probably. So you have to be able to plan it with this go to front layer, and also you can go to the back layer. So if you want your menu to be behind all your graphics, well, that's what you do. You put your menu in the back, you'd put everything on top of it in the front layer, and then you can even go a step further. You can go forwards and backwards so many layers. So if you go to the back layer, it's pretty easy. You're just going way to the back as far as it'll go. Then you could go forward, let's say 10 layers, and that would bring your graphic to the back first and then ahead 10 layers. So then in the next graphic, you could go forward, let's say 20 layers, meaning it's going to go to the back and then ahead of the previous graphic. The banana, let's say, was 10 layers, the apple's 20 layers, so the apple should be ahead of the banana. And if you did that in a forever loop, forever it would be like that. So it didn't matter if you moved this apple around your screen, it's always going to be ahead of the banana by 10 layers. That's how you do this. And then if you put, let's say, the arrow 30 layers ahead, well, the arrow is going to be on top of the apple, which is going to be on top of the banana. That's how you determine your layers, okay? And that's how you have to plan your game. And that's going to cause less problems for you when you code things. One other thing I want to talk about layering, because you might not have it in a forever loop, but you just need it to be at specific locations, and you're wondering why things are loading up the way they're loading up. The bigger the graphic and the size of it in bytes, the longer it takes to load, and how it works is like I told you earlier. The last thing to be dropped or last thing to load is going to be on top. So sometimes you might have the menu, which is taking up 3/4 of your screen, your menu screen popping up, and then the small teeny graphic of a basketball in your menu to show that you're selling basketballs, for instance, loading up after it, and the basketball is going to be behind it. Why? Is because the menu loaded up last. It's bigger size. So the Scratch game is going to load it up a split second after the basketball, and your basketball is going to be behind it. So that's where you have to make sure that this basketball has to be on top of that. All right. And if your basketball does not have the code forever go to front layer in it, even if it has go to front layer and it loads up before the menu does, it's still going to be behind it. I know that sounds confusing, but it's only going to fire this off once, but because it fires it off before the menu loads, it's still going to be behind it. But if you have this in a forever loop, then yes, it will be on top of it. So that's what you have to, that kind of thing is what you're going to have to remember when you're layering your graphics in Scratch. All right. Hopefully that's clear. Maybe it's not. Just watch that again. Maybe it'll make sense the second time you hear it. All right. So that's all that. Here you have changed costume number, backdrop number. You can physically change it with these. I'm going to do this a lot, and you probably will too, but I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use variables to do that, okay? Because variables are how you're going to control your game. Anyways, we're going to go on to sound, and then I'm probably going to end this video, and then I'll continue it in another episode because I don't want it to be too long. This one's already long enough because sound is going to be pretty quick. I don't use too much sound in my games until the very end. I only add sound at the end. So this is, if you start making a game and you feel like it needs sound, it might be a game about sound. Maybe a music clicker where you have notes coming down, like Guitar Hero, where you have notes coming down, and as it gets to a line, you want to click the certain notes at the right time or hit a key on your keyboard. You can do that with this. It's not that difficult. I say it's not that difficult. I've never gone too far into it, but I have started one and I got it working. All right. And all I did was anytime I missed a note, I would change the pitch by a certain amount and then bring it right back, and it would sound like I messed up. It was actually quite fun to do. I did it this past Christmas, was a Christmas caroling game that I was designing. I never got too far into it, but because I got busy, but it is possible to do. So you can do various things with Scratch Sound, and all you're going to do is you're going to go to Sounds, you're going to upload whatever sound that you want, okay? This one already has a sound for basketball, so we're just going to go here, and that's what a basketball sounds like if you were bouncing it on the ground. You could repeat that into a loop for your game, okay? And once you have your sounds downloaded, then you can actually drag these out. Click the drop down menu and switch to whatever sounds that you put. So if you have music, you could put it here, and you can put it wherever you want. Again, I would create a blank file. I would call it music or sound, and then that would be my main file for all my sound in the game, perhaps. All right, so that might be how you want to do it. And when I create these files, I said it in another video that I create a main code file. I don't have graphics. It's all it is code. That's it. I do not put any graphics, so you don't see anything. It's just there to stack my files of code in. All right, so sound. This is play sound until done. So once you hit this button, if you have a 1-minute song here, put in here, it's going to play that until it's done. You're not going to be able to shut it off until it's completed its whole circuit. All right. So there's that, or you can just do this, where you can start the sound. And once you start it, you can start another sound right away if you want. But if you do this, sometimes it can conflict with other sounds and it can cause problems. So you want to use these as you see fit. I haven't used sound enough to know exactly what the difference is other than that, though. So if you want to play around with it, you can. Stops all sounds, though, is pretty straightforward. Whatever's playing, it's going to stop them all. All right. The pitch, very straightforward. It's going to change the pitch up or down based on the number you have here. If it's 10, it's going up. If it's down, or if it's negative, it's going down. Pretty simple. Okay. Clear sound effect. So if you had changed the pitch at all, up by, let's say, 30, and it's going to just stay there, well, you just want to clear sound effects. It'll bring the pitch back down to 0 where it should be. Okay. And you can set the pitch as well. You can set this pan left and right. I have no idea what that means because you can't actually move sound that I know of, so I don't really know what it does. Change volume by, okay, well, should be self-explanatory. If you find that your music is too loud, or if you have a sound setting in your options menu or whatever, and you need to lower the sound and you want your players to be able to change the sound because it's too loud, well, that's how you're going to do that. You're going to change the volume. And the same with set. Set will set the volume to a specific percentage and leave it there. And if you want to be able to change it with a slider or whatever later in some other part of your code, well, this is where you're going to drag and drop this button in. Okay, and that's the sound. I might not have done the best explanation with sound, and that's only because I don't usually use much sound until the end of my games, and when I do, it's very minimal. I'm not huge into the sound part of my game. So that's up to you. But if you're making a game about sound, well, you're going to need to learn this. And it's not too difficult. All the times that I've used it, I was able to do what I needed it to do pretty easily. So you're just going to play around with this. All right, so I'm just going to delete this basketball because I don't want to have to pull all those out. And that's going to end this video, guys. In the next video, we're going to continue on here. And I'll continue explaining maybe the next 3. And then we'll go into, I'll make another video after that and we'll explain the last 3. Okay, hope you learned something here today, guys. I know, like I say, for veterans and for people who already know how to use Scratch, this was probably nothing new to any of you guys. And if you've seen any errors that I made, because I might have explained something wrong. I do make mistakes. I'm not perfect by any stretch. Don't be afraid to leave a comment and I'll try and fix it in my next video so that people aren't confused. I don't like confusing people, and I don't mean to lie to you. I just sometimes I make mistakes on what things do, and as you code, you're going to make errors, but you'll be able to debug them easy enough. All right. So thanks for watching, guys. If you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button down below, that would be awesome. I would appreciate that. You guys have a good night.